This is TTELT, Teaching Tips for English Language Teachers. I'm Dr. Gina Rhodes. Let's get started. This week on TTLT, we have Heather Reichmuth, and she's talking to us about email etiquette. And she's giving us lots of great tips on how to use email with our students. Heather and I met when she was my student at the University of Southern California, and she has gone on to do some amazing things, and she's now working on her dissertation. I couldn't be prouder. So let's hear more from Heather and learn more about all the things that she's doing, and especially learn about email etiquette. Here we go. Hi.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Good, thanks. I had to leave the house. I'm at Traverse Pie Company. It's like a little cafe. But I think it'll be okay. Is it okay?
I do hear background noise.
I tried canceling it out. I was just playing with the
Audio.
audio thing. That's why I logged in early. Should I wear my headphones? I did bring headphones.
It might help. See what happens.
Yeah, it's just too cold here to go outside and play.
Hi, Heather. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you, Gina. How are you?
I'm doing fabulous. I am so excited that you are here to talk to us today at TTLT. And we're going to start by asking you to tell us just a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm really honored to be here. Thank you for the invitation. And so a little bit about me. I spent 15 years teaching English as a foreign language in South Korea. I have experience teaching almost every grade, basically. But the majority of my time I spent kind of half in high schools, about six to 7 years in high schools, and also approximately 6 to 7 years at the university level. And right now, I'm doing my PhD in teacher education at Michigan State University. And I know, Gina, because I did my master's degree in TESOL at USC.
Yeah, and you were one of my star students.
Oh, thank you.
Well, we're really happy that you're here with us today and talk to us about email etiquette. And I know this is an issue that many of us have with our students. So I would like you to start by giving us your definition of email etiquette. What is it? What do you mean by that?
So what I mean by email etiquette is more kind of formal email writing, kind of taking a structure of a formal, I guess in the past before email, it would have been a little bit more of the structure of a kind of formal letter and kind of giving that tool to students. So basically, years ago, I started noticing students sending me emails about being late for class or missing class, but it many times was very frustrating to know who the student was, which class that they were in, even to the sometimes also it was an issue of like how they were requesting things as well, like tone in the emails as well. And so I started thinking, this is something that's really important because my students are not only my students, but they're also going to be somebody else's students, and they all want jobs. And at least in South Korea, it's really important. Like a lot of these jobs and companies that they work for are working with people in international settings. And if they cannot write a proper email, this could really negatively affect them, even in their future jobs and also in their own advancement. So I thought that this was a really important skill that students really needed to know because I want them to succeed. I wanted my students to succeed. They want to succeed. So why not help them with some tools to give them those tools of success? So
I think that's excellent. Yeah, so those are very important tools for our students to be able to use for their courses and also, as you mentioned, for their future success. So I think it's great that you have done this. And What you mentioned some of the issues surrounding etiquette when your students were emailing you. Was there any other issues that you'd like to talk about?
Um, well, I mean, sometimes like students also like they had, I guess it depends on the institution where you're working at, but there were also things like maybe the email, like who was sending it, it was also very, very cryptic. You know, like they had numbers or strange like cherry, like there's a cherry picture behind me. So like cherry at gmail.com. Well, I don't know who Cherry is, so you know, not only was there no name in the email body, but there was also this ambiguous sender as well. So this was also making it really challenging.
Yeah, I've had similar issues with my students, so I completely understand. So, how did you teach your students about email etiquette?
Yeah, so I worked with another colleague of mine, Joyce Paek, who we wrote an article together, which Gina is providing for you. And we worked together, and we both kind of um, did a similar lesson together. So I'll share with you now the the website. Well, I'll share with you my screen, and you can take a look
Great.
at the lesson. Oh, okay. So here we are. So you'll have access to this from the website that Gina sent you. So we wrote a TESOL Connections article because I think this is a really important topic, and so I wanted to put it out there so lots of English teachers could have this access to this. So what we start out by doing, actually, I would start the class and start saying, talking to the students about why I was teaching this, and this would usually happen at the beginning of the semester. I didn't want it to continue. I didn't want to keep getting emails throughout the whole semester, not knowing who the students were. So I thought this was like really essential to do at the beginning of the school year. And I was lucky at the university I was at. We had a computer lab where students could sit down and they could do it together. But I think this could be also adopted in other contexts as well, even if teachers aren't in a place that has a writing lab, like a computer lab, or maybe send students to the library, or you can do this by hand as well if you're in a location where internet is not something that is easily accessible. So I think it's adoptable. But so I would talk to them and say to them, what if I said to the president of this university, if I wrote them an email, say, hey, it's me, you're the teacher who teaches the English class. I want a raise now. And all the students, of course, are laughing. Obviously, the president, one, is not going to know who I am, which is probably a good thing if I said that to him. And two, also, they're not going to like how I ask the question, right? So in this lesson, I honestly focus not as much on tone. There's some tone in here, but I think there's a lot you could do with this to focus on tone. But there are actually stems that I have in here to help with tone. But I kind of would say these things to them because I think it would help them think about relationships and hierarchy and how like I'm just the teacher, right? And the president of the university has more power than I do. And also the president's not going to know who I am because I'm one of many English teachers at the university. So just to kind of give them that perspective, of like what the professor's thinking as well. So I would share these kind of sample emails, and I'd have students partner up with 2 or 3 other students, depending on the size of the class, and give them some sample emails similar to ones that Joyce and I had both received in the past. So,
Right.
Yeah.
I love the first one. That's all caps. Yeah.
Yes,
and
exactly.
the sender is just basically numbers. That's
right.
Awesome.
Exactly. And there's a cute little emoticon and lots of exclamation marks.
That's great, but no name.
Right. Exactly. And I want to say, like, I don't want the students to not feel familiar with us, but I also think that they should know also how to do it properly. Right? Obviously, later on, if they sent me emoticons, I was happy, but I wanted them to know that it wasn't like formal writing as well, right? So the students would look at these and discuss, what makes it easy to read this, like what are some things that are maybe problematic or confusing to the receiver, And email number 2, for those of you who can read Korean, maybe it's okay to know who the student's name is. Like, I can read the student's name, but if I didn't know how to read in Korean, I would have no idea who this student was, right? And at a university, especially the one I was working at, there were so many international professors there that would have no idea who this student was. And then there are a lot of, you can see in this one, there are a lot of typographical errors as well. So like the student didn't take any time to really check, and also using a lot of like slang or, informal writing, right?
PLZ for please. Yeah, that's not very professional.
Not professional, right? And also, if you don't really know the professor or you don't know the person you're sending it to, it can give a bad impression, right? And then this last one was, kind of the best example, right? Because the student has their first and last name, they have their student ID number, which at our university they were supposed to include. Obviously, every university is different. And they also said which class that they were in, which makes it really helpful for an instructor to know who their student is. Like, because at least for myself, I was teaching 4 different courses of students, right? So I would be able then to know who they were. And then they said they apologize, they say why they're writing, and they also said that they got the homework on their own and they attached it. And they said that they attached the file, which is really helpful to know. Then you know to look for that file, right? And then sincerely, and then their full name.
I completely appreciate that they got the homework from one of their classmates. And
right?
Yeah, that's one thing I constantly encourage my students to do. Like, it's not my job to get you the homework. Everyone else in the class had it too.
Exactly. So you can see on this the second page here, the students with their partner, they can make a list of do's and don'ts. So you're not really teaching them. You're teaching them, but you're not like standing there lecturing them. You're actually letting them discover for themselves, things that you should and shouldn't do in a formal email. And then they can make extra notes that they might have with their partner. Okay, and then on the following page, there's what to include in an email. So sender your full name in English if possible. Now, I know some of these students, they had set up their accounts a long time ago, and maybe they don't want to, or they can't, change the name in the sender block. And, maybe their English teacher's not the only person that they email, probably. Although these days, I don't know how many people are emailing as well. So young people, I don't know. So you might be the only one that they're emailing. I don't know. But then subject line, tell the professor what the email is about without opening it. And this is really important because professors, I think teachers, even a company that you're sending an email to, if you're sending an email to a company, they want to know how urgent is it, right? And what it is before they open it. So it's quite important. So label it's the homework from May 15th. Then the teacher knows, okay, when I open this email, I know this is Jin Suk's late homework, and I'll grade it today, and I'll grade it now, and I can just open it. So, paragraph writing, absent from class, scheduling a meeting. So each time it just makes it much easier for the instructor to know what they're looking at, or anybody who's receiving this email. And then a proper greeting. In some of those emails, there was no greeting, but sometimes I got things like, "Hi, Heather," and that's fine if you feel friendly and familiar with your students, but not everyone's going to feel that way, right? And especially if you're contacting somebody for the first time, it's important to use, like their title and either their first and last name or just their last name.
Yeah, I completely agree that especially at the beginning of the semester, students should be sending things formally, practicing that. And then if they get to know you and they've asked the professor, is it all right if I, use your first name? That's what we use in class. Is that okay if I address you that way in emails? That's completely different than doing it the first time.
Right, exactly. It's a little shocking, right? The other way. And then a self-introduction. So say who you are, right? I'm Cindy Lee, this is my ID number, and I'm in this class of yours. Or, their name again, and which time period that they're in the class. Some kind of way so the instructor or the person that they're contacting knows who they are. And then a reason for writing. I'm writing to ask you about yesterday's homework. I'm writing because I'd like to know what I missed in class today. So these kind of sentence starters kind of help the students right, with practicing that. I wanted to let you know that, and then whatever it happens to be. I'd like to ask you a question about my midterm score.
Yeah, and these are awesome sentence stems. I think that not enough time sometimes is spent on teaching students the correct stem to start a sentence. And once they know those stems, they can say almost anything.
Right, it's really helpful, I think, giving them those tools, and then later on they can always go back to this and they can take a look at it and like, oh yeah, how did I say that, or how am I supposed to say that, and start that. Because writing is one of those things that, like, there are so many, especially with this kind of thing, it's such a formality that, you know, it's kind of a pattern, and knowing that pattern is so helpful. Okay, and then other information that they might want to add to the email. So request for action. Could you? So we have a lot more of these kind of could, would, please.
Love it.
Right? Could you let me know when I need to prepare for the next class? I did not understand the homework. Can you please explain it to me again? May I make an appointment with you? When are you available to meet?
Very polite and very useful. Yeah.
And I think sometimes, you know, with like just thinking about language and culture, you know, depending on where you're located and the students' cultures, you know, how we speak politely to others is different in different languages, right? So I think, you know, having these is really helpful because there might be other ways of showing politeness in their culture that might not be in words or in words in different ways. So it might be more difficult and challenging to know how to say those polite terms in English. And it's something that has to be learned. And I don't know if it's always directly explained or not. So I think it's something important as well. Apologizing. They might need to apologize. So again, more tools. I am sorry I was not able to attend class on Monday, May 1st. I was absent because I was very sick. Again, you could tell them it depends on the culture again, how explicit you want them to be, right? We had put this in there because we don't need details in our personal point of view, but just you were sick, that's enough, right? Yeah. I apologize for being absent.
I completely agree. Sometimes they'll give me a whole paragraph about why they were out and who they were, like why they needed to go and how sick they were and exactly, you know, where the pain was. And I was like, okay, I get it.
Exactly. Also, yeah, sometimes I receive things about, you know, they have a hangover. Again, just tell me you were sick. It's better that way.
Exactly. Yeah, you don't need to know how they got sick if that's the case. Yeah.
Exactly. You're not supposed to tell your teacher that.
I know. You really don't need them to know that.
Exactly.
Unless you really know them very well.
Exactly. I was like, you're not supposed to tell me that. But okay. Okay. And we got the point about the apologizing, but yeah. And then attaching files. I think this is also important because sometimes you can miss files that are there. You might not notice it. Although I think Google's better nowadays, and I think a lot of the systems are better than in the past, but it's still nice to alert. Also, writing it in, you don't forget to attach it too, right? Because whenever you write, I've attached this, and then you send, and then usually you get a little message like, you didn't attach anything.
You said you were going to attach this. You didn't attach it. Yeah.
And which is helpful. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's helpful on their end too. Yeah, so I've attached a copy of my homework. Please find the attached paragraph writing file. I've included my assignment. And then a closing. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your understanding. I appreciate your help. Thank you. I appreciate your concern. Thank you. So some kind of thank you at the end to kind of wrap it up. And then their signature. Sincerely or regards. And then their full name.
Yeah, and I like that you have one example where they included their student number, which again is handy, especially if they didn't include it earlier in the message. It's useful to make sure that you got the right minho, because you might have 3 minhos in your class.
Exactly. I was just going to say that. Exactly. Some students have similar names, and it's really important, especially if you're grading something, that you don't make that mistake, right? You think it's one minho, but it's a different minho.
Yeah. And another thing I have with my students is I normally, like, if they use an English name in class, which I don't think is necessary at all, but some of them prefer to. But if I'm used to calling them Cherry in class, and then they sign this and they never mention Cherry in this message, they only say Minho, and I'm like, okay, but who's Minho? I don't have a Minho that I know in class, or I might have 3 on the roster, but they all go by Cherry and Daisy, and so I'm still confused as to which Minho this is, because they don't use that name in my class. So it's important to include all your names that are used.
Yes, that's a great point, Gina. Yeah, I would ask students that as well, to include all their names, because I had some Chinese students who were going by Korean names and English names, which got really confusing. It was too many names. So I said, just write down all the names, but most importantly on your assignments, put your ID number so I can be sure 100% who you are.
Exactly. Yeah. The last thing you want is for, you've taken this time to send this message to your teacher to get them to realize that you're going to be absent, and then they give the exception to another student and not you. So that would be, that's bad when that happens.
Yes, exactly. So then at the end, there was kind of like another example with all of this kind of written out. And then you could have the students also practice this. So you could do different things. I use this as a way to also get to know the students. So it's a little bit, some of them will get a little confused. So you can choose what you want to do. I use it as a way to also get to know them. So, because it was, again, the beginning of the semester. So what I did was had them write an email that introduced themselves to the teacher. So they had to provide basic information such as their class, major, etc. So they would be following all this formatting, but they wouldn't be saying that they were sick or something like that. Basically, they would be doing the subject line, the greeting, their self-introduction, why they're writing, and then after this part, they would be talking about themselves. And then they'd attach a file, you'll see in a minute, and then they close and do a signature. So sometimes some of them do get a little confused by that, so you have to be a little bit clear about it when you're explaining it. But they provide basic information about themselves, such as their name, class, major. Tell the professor something interesting or funny about yourself so I can remember him or her. Explain what the strengths and weaknesses are for you when it comes to English. Give a detailed explanation of what you would like to improve this semester in English, and attach a recent photo. Follow the formal email writing format. Use the expressions given and what to include in your email. So that is this.
That's a great follow-up assignment. I think that's perfect. Then you've got all that information. If they forget in the future email, at least you can go back to that email and say, okay, who was Cherry again? So,
Right.
And then you can say, Cherry, did you forget what we learned at the beginning of the semester?
That's right. And sometimes I was like, don't you remember? Exactly. And then I also provided a checklist, right? So that they can go, again, like I said, sometimes they get a little confused. So did they include everything in the subject line, the greeting, self-introduction? And you could even adjust this to your own, classes. You can make it shorter, just put, is there a greeting? Is there a subject line? Maybe I made it more complicated than it needs to be. But basically, right, to let them check the box that they fulfilled all those things, and then they would email it to me, and then I would, rate it, basically. And how I would grade it, assess it, is basically, did they include all those things? It wasn't about their grammar or, things like that. As long as they tried their best, I don't think, even I make grammatical errors. I don't think something has to be 100% perfect. It has to be understandable. This is my own personal philosophy. It has to be comprehensible, and there has to be effort made. And these days, so many email systems do underline in red or blue if it's awkward, like a grammar. If a sentence is awkward, it goes in blue, so they could just double check it. If it's underlined in red, check it. My last name is always underlined in red, but they should at least check, because you also don't want to spell somebody's name incorrectly, right? So,
especially not your professor if you're practicing writing formal emails.
Exactly. So, but, I also alerted them to that because I don't know. I wasn't sure necessarily if Korean does that or if Chinese does that. I'm not really sure if the programs do that with those languages. So I wanted to alert their attention to why that was happening and that my name would do that no matter what they did, unless they changed my name altogether. So, but yeah, I thought that was also something that was important to kind of let them kind of think about. Yes. And so I was also thinking about, when they're looking at the emails and they're talking about it, I forgot this. I also had them talk about, like, what does formal email writing look like in Korean culture or in Chinese culture as well. So I forgot that was something that we also did at the beginning as well, talked about that, had discussions around that. So it really just kind of helped them focus on, like, what was happening, like what I was expecting and what they were looking at, and kind of, obviously there's formalities in Korean, there are formalities in Chinese and other languages and cultures, right? So just kind of gearing them into, like, making those connections between, yes, in, my language, there's this formality. Also in English, there's a formality that we should follow.
Excellent. Well, I think this is great. And as you mentioned, we are definitely going to have the link to this article in the notes so that everyone who's listening or watching right now can have this article and use it with their students. I think it's fabulous. Were there any specific, how do I want to say, so any things that you found that were especially, let's see, I'm just going to start over.
No worries.
What changes did you notice in your students' writing after you have taught them about email etiquette? Did you notice overall change in their writing or just in their emails?
Oh, I didn't think that's a great question. I was thinking more about when you started asking the question and I was predicting. I was thinking about their emails. Overall, I'd say about their emails, definitely. The whole class, it was an academic English class. So we did focus on writing throughout the whole semester. You know what I mean? And this was kind of an earlier assignment. But I think, it helped get them started on the ideas of writing and, about the ideas of structure. I'm trying to think. I did do it both semesters. First and second semester. So even in second semester, we would typically do more essay writing. But again, I think it was a good warm-up exercise, even for students who, had already had experience with paragraph writing. I think it was a great way to kind of warm up in this semester, to start kind of like with a small kind of writing exercise when it was about themselves, but also about some structure as well. So I think it was really, really helpful in that way.
And you did notice a change in their email writing after this. Yeah.
Yes,
and
definitely got a lot more, like, names, and it wasn't always perfect, but at least I knew who it was the majority of the time.
That's great. Well, I think this is fabulous. And like I said, we're going to make sure that our listeners are able to get the link to the article. Was there anything else that you'd like to add about email etiquette?
No, it's just something that I think is important to teach, because I think it's something that sometimes as teachers are like, why aren't they sending us nicer, like, better emails, or why is it so informal, right? And I think it's something that sometimes we're complaining about, but we actually have the tools and the keys to empower our students
right,
to actually do it properly. And I don't think that they're doing it, because they have some kind of, I don't know,
malicious intent.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'd say, like, the student would be, like, demanding something, and then I'd see the student who would be, like, really sweet and really, like, hi, teacher, and I'm like, I don't think she meant to say it like that,
Right.
So yeah, giving them the tools is really important, and that's our job as teachers, as educators, to do that. So
yeah, I agree with you. I think it's much better for us to, as you said, empower them and give them the tools than to just complain that they don't do it the way you would like them to do it. And that's what I hear a lot of, when we get into the teacher room, and we go like, oh, why do they always do that? I'm like, well, it might be because you haven't taught them not to.
Right. Exactly.
Oh, all right. Well, thank you so much for that, Heather. And can you tell us what projects you're working on right now?
Oh my gosh, what projects?
So
Well, my
many, right?
dissertation,
I
too
know.
many.
Your dissertation, that's important. And can you
That's a
tell
really
us what
important.
you tell us a little bit about your dissertation, what you're working
Oh
on?
yeah, sure. So I'm really interested. So I left Korea and I'm married. My husband's Korean, and we have a child. And I mean, before even that, I mean, being a language teacher, I've been interested in language and language learning and all that. And after having her, there was, we obviously wanted to give her two languages because I struggled all the time with Korean. My husband struggled with English, and we know this, like, just how hard it is. So we thought it'd be amazing to just teach her two languages when she's a baby, and how amazing it'll be and how great for her and all these things. And it's really hard. It's a really hard thing. It sounds perfect before you have a child, and and I mean, people do it, right? But it's really challenging. It's really a lot of effort needed. But I'm really interested in like how families are doing it, and and those challenges, and also yeah, especially in families like our own that are intermarried, intercultural, you know, just looking at like how like the families practice also culture and how family members negotiate language and culture, and just kind of our yeah. So all those kind of interesting and exciting things kind of come together, and like how kids perceive languages in the home, and whether they want to hear them or not. Like in our own experience, when we moved to the US, before that, my daughter's first words were Korean. But after we moved here, she didn't want to hear Korean anymore. Like when my husband would speak Korean to her, she'd like walk away or close the door on him. So like all these different things were happening in this new environment. And so I think it's really interesting to see and think about. I think there's, especially in TESOL, there's such an emphasis on only learning English, which is important, right? It opens opportunities and different things, but also I think in like, for example, the US, a lot of kids are not maintaining like Spanish or Korean, which is really too bad because they could continue to grow in their Spanish or their Korean and be bilingual, but a lot of kids, are just kind of leaving those other languages or losing those other languages. There's a shift, and then they don't know how to speak Spanish or Korean or Chinese. And so like people like myself, like my grandparents immigrated from Italy, I don't know Italian. I had to study Italian, and so, but it wasn't something that I learned from the home.
Right.
So that's kind of what I'm interested in. Like, how do we help kids? How do we change perspectives, and how do we think about these things for
Okay.
for children, right? So that they could be proud of their languages and use their multiple languages.
Excellent. Well, I know that we're all looking forward to the end of the dissertation. I know you are looking for it to be over, but we're looking forward to reading it once it's finished.
Oh, thank you.
And
I'm not looking forward to writing it all, but yes.
well, I know you're still in the early stages, but it'll be great when it's done. Trust me, it feels fabulous once they finally tell you, okay, it is finished. And then the weight is off your shoulders.
And then the new fun begins, right? New
Yes,
fun
exactly. And you've written some articles and you've done some research related to this topic. I know you've written some articles talking specifically to women in similar situations to yours who have married Korean men, lived in Korea, that sort of thing. And have you provided us with links to those articles?
Oh, I didn't think about that. I can though. I can.
That
I
would
will
be
email you.
fabulous. I think
Yeah,
that our
absolutely.
listeners might really be interested in some of the research that you're already doing or have
Okay.
done in the past. That would be great. And where can teachers find you if they do have
Oh,
questions about
sure. I
email
can,
etiquette
or anything.
or
They can
teaching
email. Yeah.
bilingual kids?
Oh yeah, I can send a link. I can provide that to you, Gina. I can give you my
Uh-huh.
email address. I also have another article that people might be interested in.
Hmm.
It's an autoethnography. I don't know if, or collaborative autoethnography. I don't know if how many people are familiar with that kind of data collection, but it's basically I worked with a Korean graduate student. She's now a professor. This is a couple years ago now, but we had a paper published this last year, and it's discussing our experiences, our teaching and living in Korea and also teaching and living in the US. And kind of how, in the article, we talk about the notion of becoming a teacher and how the notion of becoming a teacher looks differently in the Korean context. So we're kind of like pushing back against Western ideas of what it means to be a teacher and what it means to become a teacher and the evolution of teachers. So kind of drawing on our own experiences of that. So that might be something else that
That's
listeners
amazing.
might also be interested in.
Definitely, yes. Definitely send us the links to all of these things.
Everything.
I think our list, of course, send us everything.
Okay.
And I think that our participants will love to hear all of these things. And we really wish you well on your dissertation writing. I know that it's a long process. And I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today about email etiquette and sharing your experience with us, your 15 years of teaching in Korea. I think that's a fabulous experience to draw from. And we do hope that you'll come back after the dissertation is finished and you have more time to relax and enjoy life.
Absolutely. I'd love to come back. Thank you so much for the invitation. And I had a great time today. Thank you so much, Gina.
Thank you. All right, great. Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, so I'm going to stop. Wow, she had a lot of great ideas. I don't know about you, but I've always had issues with my students until I teach them differently about how to write a proper email. So I think that Heather has done a great job of outlining how she does the process and how she works with her students to empower them to write emails properly. And that's our first top teaching tip: empowering your students to write the emails properly. So instead of complaining that they don't know how, it's our job as their teachers to give them the tools so that they can learn how to properly write the emails and write them the way we would like them to write, so that not only while they're a student, they're writing them properly, but also when they go out into the world, whether they're writing it in English or even in some other languages, having those skills for writing email in a professional way is a great skill to teach your students, and they'll take that with them throughout their lives. So it's a great thing to take the time to teach your students, and it's going to make your life so much easier as a teacher. And I love that she said that they talk about how formal writing is done in their own culture. It's always great to compare and contrast the culture of your students. So have them discuss, what does a formal letter look like? What does a formal email look like in your own culture? And now let's look at what it looks like when we're doing it in English. So I think that was great. I love also another top teaching tips is she provided lots of examples of good and bad emails and had the students look at them and say, oh, what's wrong with this? What's the problem with this email? What can we do to improve this email? And had them look at it and create the list of things to do and things to not do. That list of do's and don'ts, especially when the students are creating it, is a very powerful tool for our students. And as she mentioned, you want to carefully explain the follow-up assignment. I think the main thing to remember is that when they were going through how to write an email, the purpose of many of the emails that her students were writing was to say, I'm going to miss class, or I don't understand the homework. So they were discussing a problem, but the assignment she wanted them to do didn't have a problem in it necessarily. It was more of an introduction. So I think it's really important to make that clear if you do give your students this type of assignment, which I recommend, that after you teach them about how to write an email to their teacher, then of course you give them the assignment of writing an email to their teacher, right? So so make sure it's clear though that they don't need to have a question, that they don't need to apologize for anything. So I think that needs to be very clear in the assignment. And the last thing that I wanted us to talk about is that when you do the link to this particular The last thing I wanted to mention while we're talking about this article that she discussed is when you download the article, you need to click on the link that I'm going to provide you, and it has a great summary of the article. And then the actual article is a PDF that you can download and have. And you need to also download the appendix. And the appendix is what she was looking at. If you were watching the video, she was looking at the appendix during the video. So she was going through all of those activities that she did with her students. So those are great examples that you could edit for your students and create examples that are similar to what you've seen with your students and issues that you have with your students. But I thought that that appendix was a great way to organize the lesson. And I thought that if I were teaching this lesson, I would look at the appendix and edit those activities to in order to teach how to write an email properly to my students. So I just wanted to point that out. All right. Don't forget that this month, I will be leading the workshop on engaging with Goose Chase. So this month, I will be talking, it's next week's episode, I believe, yes. I'll be talking about Goose Chase and engaging with Goose Chase. And then I'll be doing 2 workshops about Goose Chase. And again, these are the same workshop. I'm doing it twice just so that those of you in different time zones will be able to participate in a better time. So choose the one that fits your time zone best. All right, so we're going to do the one Thursday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then we're going to do another one on Saturday morning, May 29th at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we have one on Thursday, May 27th at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then another one of the same workshop on Saturday, May 29th at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we hope that you'll see you at one of these 2 workshops. And another amazing workshop that's coming up is one with Alma and Isabel. And another amazing workshop that we have coming up is one with Alma and Isabel. They're going to be talking to us about becoming authors, okay? Another amazing workshop that's coming up is one with Alma and Isabel. They're going to be doing a workshop about creating authors in your classroom. That's going to be really powerful. I'm really looking forward to this workshop. And this is Saturday, June 12th at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we hope to see you there. And of course, you can sign up for this and all TTLT events at the TTLT .org/events website on our, and you can sign up for this and all TTL. And of course, you can sign up for this and all TTLT events on our website. Just click on events and everything that's coming up will be on our website. So click on this event and register through Zoom. And we hope to see you at this event. And of course, don't forget about TTLT Talks. We're really excited about we're really excited about all the teachers who have been coming to our TTLT Talks and are taking the time to discuss with their colleagues about the issues that are issues for us as teachers. So come and participate in this month's topics. We're going to be talking on May 29th at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is Saturday, May 29th, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we'll be talking about the topics that matter to you and your students. So come and discuss with us and help us choose the topic for next month. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time. I think I'm going to do this again. You can decide which one you want to use, all right? Okay, so And of course, you can follow us at on our website at ttlt.org. You can send us an email at ttltinfo@gmail.com. You can join our Facebook group if you haven't already at TTELT. And of course, follow us on Instagram at t.telt and on Twitter at TTELT1. We hope to see you there. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time. Oh, fun. Thank you for editing, Kira. Did I mention that you're awesome? I thought I might. Or I could even say Kira rocks, right?